Baseball is back, and there really is nothing like a home team advantage. That's why Team Toyota makes an obvious choice for your next vehicle purchase or service. With their MVP pricing guarantee, teammates reward program, and streamlined customer experience, their award-winning sales and service departments are there for all of your vehicle needs. A home team advantage is nothing without family and community. Their employees are part of the family, they're part of your town, and we're all part of the team. Visit teamtoyota.net and choose one of their 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am Corey Seidman. He's Ricky Batalico. Our producer is the one and only Spencer McKercher, who we'll hear from in a little bit. But Ricky, the Phillies sit here 9-8 as we record. It's a Tuesday morning. They won their series opener against the Rockies. There was a lot that went on in that game. I'm going to ask you about the tackle at the plate. I'm going to ask you if you ever had any plays like that with that Jeff Hoffman, the game-saving tag, the collision. Kind of scary there for a second, but I want to begin just with the offense because it's what everybody's talking about still. 5-6 series here into the season. The Phillies have not gotten going. They've had one game with more than 5 runs. That was the game that Bryce Harper homered 3 times. I know we've sat here and we've talked about whether it's concerning, whether it's not concerning. At this point, is there anything that you're pinpointing that you do think could be a long-term worry for the Phillies offensively?
I don't think it's a long-term thing. I really don't. I mean, a lot of people will sit there and try to tell you, well, this is what they're going to be. I think one guy, that's a bit of a worry. He doesn't even have an extra base hit would be Casty. I mean, which is very, very surprising. Maybe this has a little something to do with Rob Thompson wanting them to take more pitches and be more selective. Maybe they're a bad ball hitting team. Did anybody think about that? Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, let's face it, Bryce Harper, he's going to hit. It's just taken some time for him to get in the groove. There are some positives. Trey Turner's hitting the ball well. I mean, Brandon Marsh has been hitting the ball fairly well for the Phils. So, I mean, you could find positives within the lineup. It's just the lack of extra base hits that's really bothersome. If you're going to get 6 hits in a 10-inning game, you would think there'd be maybe a mixed-in home run here or there, and it's just not happening for the Phils right now. They're hitting a lot of balls solid to center field, and the ball's not carrying right now. I've noticed that a couple times. Bryce Harper at least twice in the last week has hit a ball hard to center field that has made it to the wall and just died out. We've seen Casty do it a couple times. I don't think there's any pinpointing anything. I just think this team is trying to find itself offensively. Once that happens, it becomes like anything else. You notice the Phillies starting pitching staff, they're all pitching well. Why? Because it's contagious. They see what the guy before is doing. They're learning from that. They're jumping out there doing their jobs. I think it's the same for hitting. Once some home runs start coming 2-3 games in a row, then you're going to see everybody kind of get into a little bit of a groove. There's going to be guys that struggle year-round. That happens sometimes. But the firepower they have on this team, it can't happen all year round, and it won't. So I'm not that worried about this.
In retrospect, it makes sense that the obsession with chasing less would get into some of these guys' heads because Nick Castellanos is 32 years old. Trey Turner is 31 years old. They're not in the span of one offseason going to be able to completely alter their offensive approach and go from being aggressive swingers to selective hitters. Maybe you would increase your selectivity a little bit, but that also brings up the conversation that, when is the goal actually accomplished? If Nick Castellanos boosts his chase rate somewhat during the regular season, okay, great. What about if it's game 3 of a playoff series and the old habits kick in? The statistical component of it, if he chases 42% or 34% or whatever the number is, really at the end of the day, you're just hoping that when you get to the playoffs, what the games that matter most, that the muscle memory is built in. So I guess that's why they want these guys to chase less during the regular season. But so far, we're kind of seeing the unintended consequence of it because I don't think it's a coincidence that the Phillies have the fewest extra base hits in all of baseball. I mean, they enter Tuesday's game, 17 games into their season, with 30 extra base hits. Their opponents have 48. A year ago at this time, the Phillies had 63. They had more than twice as many extra base hits. Castellanos himself had 9 doubles at this point last year through 17 games. So you're not seeing their ace swings as much. And it just looks like an offense that's caught in between. You have guys who are tentative, and there hasn't been a night where guys struck the ball with authority for, multiple cycles through the lineup. Yeah, they hit some balls hard on Monday night, but there was still a lot of weak contact from a lot of pockets of the lineup. And yeah, you just wonder like when this is going to turn the corner, or if some elements of this offense have just gotten stale.
And the way I look at it, what was their offense that bad last year? I mean, power numbers, slugging wise, it was outstanding. So what was the real thing?
A game last year?
Yeah, the real problem was in the playoffs, really against the Diamondbacks, when the Diamondbacks decided we're not going to throw strikes because these guys swing at everything. I mean, those are the type of games maybe you want to be a little bit more selective in. But in my opinion, man, you got boppers. You got guys that could hit the ball out of the ballpark on this team. Let them free swing. I could give 2 bleeps about what Kyle Schwarber's batting average is. I really could care. If he hit 300 this year with 10 home runs, everybody would be, what's wrong with Kyle Schwarber? I want to see him hit the ball out of the ballpark. I don't care if he hits 150. If he's and by the way, he has been selective, but I want to see aggressiveness. That's the one thing that's been missing from this team. And I'll go all the way down. Who's been aggressive? Marsh. Trey Turner's been a little bit aggressive. Look at what they're doing. They're hitting the baseball around the ballpark. You get down to look at Whit Merrifield. Could you tell me that he's being aggressive at the plate? Because the answer is absolutely not. I think he's being more passive and tentative than anything else. I think you got to go up there with the thought process is I'm going to do some damage. Forget these singles. I'm going to do some damage. And once they get that mentality back, then you're going to see some big numbers being put up on the board. They have not gotten to that point yet this year. And here's the thing that's bothersome. We know who these guys are. We know what the back of their baseball cards say. So are they going to play up to those numbers, or are they going to take walks, or are they going to be passive all year? I think you just got to be a little bit more aggressive.
And this is the week to do it, because they're facing the Rockies and the White Sox this week, the worst team in the National League, the worst team in the American League, 2 of the, probably 3 worst pitching staffs in baseball. And you only have, a limited number of games against these teams. You only have 2 series against each National League opponent that's not in your division. You only have 1 series against these American League teams. So there aren't too many weeks left the rest of the season that on paper would look this advantageous for the Phillies. So, on the one hand, 9-8 without the offense clicking. I guess on the other hand, you could say that in previous seasons, lesser Phillies pitching staffs would have resulted in this team being far below 500. This team might be like 5-12, 6-11 if the starting staff and the bullpen wasn't as filled out. The Phillies entered Tuesday night with the 3rd best ERA in all of baseball, 3rd best from the starters. The bullpen ERA is still over 5, but again, we know that's skewed because of performances like Connor Brogdon or Ricardo Pinto or opening day from Alvarado and Strahm. But really, you have about half of that bullpen clicking right now. And you also got a strong start on Monday night from Aaron Nola, signs that we needed to see. The velocity was back to its normal levels, 92, 93 miles per hour. And that was the best his curveballs looked in years, in my opinion. I'll
tell you what, that was nasty. I mean, did you know all his swings and misses on Monday night were on the curveball? That is pretty impressive. That just goes to show that certain nights he has the ability to focus on one thing. And I'm still a firm believer that you have to be able to locate your fastball, which he did that last night in his sinker. He did that last night also, but he got a lot of takes on those pitches, which, what does that tell you? That the hitters were looking curveball, and on top of that, they still couldn't hit it. So, I mean, number 1, being deceptive. Number 2, locating it. The one thing that I saw Aaron Nola do in Monday night's game was he was able to throw his curveball on the corner of the plate, the outside corner of the plate, to right-handed hitters, and then expand it. And when you could do that with your curveball, man, you're going to get a lot of strikeouts. And that's sometimes who he has to be. I think sometimes, guys will lay off of that curveball. That's when he's got to be really good with his fastball down in the zone with movement. But I think he's recognizing that right now. And he looked as though this was more prime Aaron Nola than we've seen all season long. And you look at him right now, 3.47 ERA right now. I mean, trending in a really good direction for him.
Yeah, Nola's looked good so far. Ranger Suarez has made a couple really good starts. He pitches the middle game of that series. And in the bullpen, like I said, Alvarado and Strahm have settled in since opening day. You've had strong starts to the season from Hoffman, from Matt Strahm, from Junior Marte. And that play on Monday night with Jeff Hoffman, I mean, that was wild. He bounces a ball to JT Realmuto, a slider that eludes Realmuto's mitt, but Hoffman and Realmuto both react immediately, and JT flips him the ball. Hoffman collides at the plate at the same time as Kyle Freeland, the Rockies pitcher/pinch runner, and somehow the tag was applied before Freeland's cleat crossed home plate. But what were your thoughts when you saw that play, Ricky?
It's a dangerous play. And you know what? The rules are so messed up around home plate that you never know what's right and what's wrong. I mean, back in the day on a play like that, we could block the plate, and we would block the plate because we didn't care about our bodies. But I mean, when you look at it last night, that is about as dangerous as it gets. And my thought was, if I'm the runner, I'm going to run them over. I don't even know if they could do that anymore. I'm not even sure of that rule. But I mean, I'm assuming if you could block the plate, you could run somebody over. But I look at it this way. You know what? Hoffman got off the mound fairly quickly. He looked for the ball right away, and he had the right angle into home plate to get the out. So good play all around. I will say this much. I've had that play twice in my career, and it was both in Colorado, and it was 2 pitches in a row. 2 pitches in a row, and we got the guy out at home plate. 2 pitches in a row just like that. So it's not an easy play for a pitcher because the play, once you get the ball, the play's either to your side or at your back. And it's just a difficult play for a pitcher to make. But Hoffman did a nice job. He got out of it unscathed. I think that's the one thing that you have to premise on this. Not a lot of pitchers are going to make that play and not get injured because it is a scary play.
Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on OpenTable.
Coming in hot like Jeff Hoffman coming in town towards home plate here. What's going on, guys? How we doing?
Spencer McKercher.
Ricky, where are you at right now?
I'm in NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Nice, cool, same. Just kind of going off that play. I don't know what we can do. I know Jeff Hoffman after the game, it's been kind of a talk about thing on social. Corey, I know you tweeted out his quote, and we got it everywhere on social media yesterday, but him saying, I kind of want more contact in baseball there. I mean, Jeff Hoffman is a big dude, right? And Kyle Freeland also a big dude. It was a collision at the plate. One, I can't believe the Rockies threw out their opening day starter in a position like that. The pinch run in the ninth, when they haven't got anybody off the bench. No one else came in. They had other options.
Sickness too, don't forget.
They did, yeah. Our good buddy Jay Cave was scratched yesterday due to an illness. But I mean, when it comes down to a play like that, is there a way that baseball can make that play safer? Or like, how is it going forward? Because I mean, Hoffman did kind of stick out his leg.
He blocked the plate.
He somewhat blocked the plate. And obviously Jeff came out and said that he wants more contact at the dish or in baseball alone. But how can baseball almost not try to eliminate that play, but just try to make it so it's not as crazy, I guess?
Well, first off, I think Hoffman was being facetious about the whole contact sport thing. I mean, we prefaced it by saying, like, did you play football? Because, he's a big dude, 6'5", 235, and he looked like a middle linebacker coming there to tackle Kyle Freeland at the plate. But in my opinion, baseball's made everything a lot safer. There are fewer collisions everywhere. Home plate, second base. We saw Jeff McNeil whine and cry because Rhys Hoskins performed a totally normal slide into second base. So I don't think that they have to make anything safer in that regard. I will say, though, that like when you see a play like that, when everybody comes out of it okay, it reminds you of the way baseball used to be. It reminds you of old school baseball. And with the Rockies, by the way, that's a good point you brought up, Spence. The fact that they had their opening day starter pinch running at third base. They had Brendan Rodgers and Jake Cave sick yesterday. They have Chris Bryant, who's dealing with a bad back, but they won't put him on the injured list. So that's good stuff right now. You have a major league team working with a one-man bench, which includes their backup catcher. And because of it, they almost got a pitcher they've already paid money to injured. So not what
The
they
opening
want.
day starter.
It's a little embarrassing, is what it is. I mean, and as far as wanting more contact, that's if he were to get hurt there, he wouldn't be saying that.
Right.
And I'm sure JT's like, don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Don't say it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys have pretty much gotten to a point now where, there's no collisions at home plate anymore. I mean, there's a lot that has changed. And I mean, when I played, there were collisions every game. I mean, the catcher knew it was coming. The runner knew it was coming. And it never really turned out great. Somebody would be injured one way or the other, whether it's just a bruise or whatnot, or worse at times. But that play right there, it's a bang, bang play, and you do what you can to protect the plate. That's all you're doing as a pitcher.
Ricky, we were talking about the lack of quality contact the Phillies make. We were talking about that earlier, and you brought up Whit Merrifield looking tentative in his at-bats. Rob Thompson on Monday made a point to get Merrifield in the lineup at third base, and they need to get him going. They signed him to an $8 million contract. He's 3 for 28, I believe, with all singles so far. He did have a sacrifice bunt that helped the Phillies win the game on Monday, but they have not gotten what they would have wanted or expected so far. We're only, 10% into the season here, but it's tricky when you're a veteran who's trying to figure out how to play twice a week. He did it somewhat in 2022 with the Blue Jays, and he didn't really start clicking in Toronto until he started playing every day in September of that year. Do you think he's going to be able to figure this out? I mean, it's a tricky role when you're going from the majority of your career playing every day to, getting 3 at-bats a week.
Sometimes guys don't respond to that. I think it's that simple. When you're used to getting 100 at-bats in a month and all of a sudden you're getting 30 in a month, that's a big switch. And I don't care who you are. Everybody wants to play. These bench players, they want to play every day. And for him to I don't know if it's even about that, though. His swing just looks really like unsure of himself. And maybe that could be from not seeing a lot of pitching, not just taking batting practice. I could take batting practice. I mean, in all honesty, they're not, unless they're bringing out the machine to throw 100 miles an hour at you, how much is that really helping you? If somebody's throwing 75 miles an hour at you, that's batting practice for these guys. And they could crush that pretty much anytime they could crush it in their sleep. But I look at it this way. You're only going to get better the more at-bats that you see and the more comfortable you are. And let's face it, he's not at that point. And it's like I said, it's the tentative swings. It's the almost, how do I put this? I call it tentative. It's kind of like reaching for the baseball. Instead of letting the ball come to you and trusting your hands, he looks like he's reaching for everything that he's swinging at, and he looks a little bit slow right now. So, I mean, you could take that for what it's worth. That's just where he is. He's not where he wants to be. And you could say that for a lot of these guys right now. I mean, but it only takes one game, like for a hitter to feel good about themselves. I know you look at Bryson Stott last night. He had not been swinging the bat well. He hit 2 baseballs that equaled up to 101 miles an hour off the bat, and he had 2 hits. So, you know what? Sometimes it's just a matter of getting a little bleeder in here and there that might help you. Maybe it just gives you that confidence that, oh, hey, you know what? I'll hit the ball hard. They'll start to fall, and then these little quails are falling in. I might be okay. So.
Yeah, if there are 2 guys who could use some bloops and some seeing eye singles, it's Nick Castellanos and Whit Merrifield. I talked to Merrifield a few weeks ago about that transition he made a few short years ago in Toronto when he became a part-time player, and he said that at first he felt like he was trying to prove himself with every at-bat, that he felt like he was a young kid again trying to make the team out of spring training, where every at-bat he went up and it carried a ton of weight. So it was a matter of him trying to work through that. But it's a different story once you're now back in it and you're in the grind and you're struggling and things aren't going well for you at the plate. Rob Thompson said on Monday that he really hasn't spoken to Merrifield about it yet, that he's kind of just trying to let him work through it, but that guys do have to make adjustments to their routine. I totally agree that we haven't seen like an aggressive swing from him. He hasn't pulled the ball much, but Whit Merrifield is a guy that when he's right, and I know a lot of Phillies fans don't believe this because they haven't seen it yet, but when he's right, he's a multi-hit machine. He can hit line drives up the middle into the opposite field. He can create that element of peskiness on the base paths, which gives pitchers more to think about when the top of the order comes up. So, That's a guy that they want to get going. And, Johan Rojas, it seems like we're starting to see better and better signs. I mean, he had an at-bat Monday night that worked a ton of pitches and ended up lining out, but he hit the ball with authority, hit it deep.
He hit 2 balls hard in that game. I think Johan Rojas, I think he's looking better. How's that? That's the best way you could put it. He looks like he's starting to get into a little bit more of a comfort zone, and he knows he's hitting the ball harder. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you're swinging a bat, and he was being overmatched early on in this season, and then all of a sudden he started hitting the ball, getting a couple hits. He's starting to hit the ball harder, not trying to do too much. Just a lot of this has to do with just flat out trust in yourself. But when you're hitting under 100, where's the trust? How do you trust yourself? And, you get a couple hits, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm not swinging the bat all that poorly. And then you hit a couple hard ones in Monday night's game against the Rockies, and that could be beneficial moving forward. So it's just one of those things where let him get some more at-bats underneath him. Hopefully he ends up hitting around 250 when all is said and done. Yeah,
I'm really impressed with Johan's recent at-bats, especially the double down the line in St. Louis the other day. It was really good to see, right? We finally are starting to see Johan Rojas kind of take on that, struggles that he's been having at the plate lately. But I kind of want to transition here now real quick. We want to talk about Zack Wheeler, right? He is now in 4 starts, they're 0-3. And in those 4 starts, the Phillies offense has got 3 runs, 1 run, 0 runs, and 2 runs. Obviously, I feel like, I think Michael brought it up on postgame the other day. I feel like there's always a pitcher that is every season that, they struggle to bring runs up against. It's been Nola, it's been Cole Hamels in the past.
Cole Hamels, 2009, wasn't it?
Exactly. Like, for whatever reason, it's almost like this offense gets complacent when they know that their ace is out there just dealing. Going forward, I mean, we got to get Zach some run support at some point, right? Especially if we want him in the Cy Young talk. He's 0-3 right now, but still has that 3 ERA. Rick, I mean, how can we get this offense rolling? Is it just an anomaly, or what's going on?
In all honesty, I don't think the offense thinks about who's on the mound. Like, they're not thinking about their own pitcher. They're thinking about the worries that they have against the pitcher that they're facing. So, I mean, it should really have no bearing on what's going on, with the exception of a lot of times when the number 1 is pitching for you, that usually means you're facing a high-level pitcher on the other side. You look at opening day, Spencer Strider was really good. He's no longer available this year, but he threw the ball extremely well that day. So what do you expect of the line? What do you expect the lineup to do on a day like that? The one thing that you have to know is that there are other really good pitchers around the league. And sometimes when you go up against the number 1, a lot of those games are going to be low-scoring games. You just got to find ways to score. And this, with the offense being in, I'll call it a little bit of a slump as a whole. Once they break out of it, things will change. So that's my belief there.
Yeah, and I mean, Wheeler's next start, he's facing the White Sox. After that, in Cincinnati, which is a hitter's haven, Great American Ballpark. So, I mean, the Phillies better start scoring some runs for him. I will say, though, that this doesn't always even out. Like, a lot of things in baseball even out, but there are some times where a year just goes by and guys don't get run support. And you look up and it's August and the guy's getting like 2.7 runs per game of support for him. And that stinks, but it's just the way it is. I will say, though, that in the Cy Young conversation, if Wheeler has the numbers, the wins don't matter nearly as much as they used to. We see that pretty much every year now, that ever since like Felix Hernandez won with that like 12 or 14 win season, ever since then, it's been a stat that doesn't matter as much, and rightfully so, because there are a lot of vultured wins out there throughout the course of 162 games. But I do wonder, though, if there is just that like subconscious level of complacency that sets in when okay, Wheeler's on the mound. We know that we get 2-3 runs, we're winning this thing. I just think overall, though, the Phillies aren't hitting. That's what it is right now. It doesn't matter if it's Sanchez or Wheeler or Turnbull or whomever. And in that rotation with Turnbull, he did not pitch as well in his most recent start. Ricky, you have Taijuan Walker, who's making a rehab start tonight. The Phillies want to get him up to 80 pitches, 5 innings. So he looks like he might be 2-3 starts away from coming back here. What do you think happens with the Walker Turnbull situation if everybody's healthy?
I think as time goes on, I think it's just going to be, let's face it, this is a team that has World Series aspirations. Is that fine to say? So I think it's going to be whoever's pitching better at the time. I mean, if Turnbull just had the one poor start and then turns it back up a notch, I think he stays. I think Christopher Sanchez is still, and I hate to say this about Christopher Sanchez, he's still like the guy that they're watching every single outing out there. And I think the way they look at it is that, okay, is he going to be the one in our rotation that sticks there all season long? Can he do the job all season long? I think with Turnbull, what they want to see is like a guy who has a flashback to when he was with Detroit before his injuries and when he was really good. And I think that's the line they're looking at right now. And I think it will come down to the very end of when Taijuan Walker's coming back before they make that decision. I still think right now I would probably keep Turnbull in the rotation right now. But things could change. I mean, if Turnbull starts pitching poorly and he doesn't look the same as he did in his first few starts, well, then maybe Christopher Sanchez gets the nod.
Yeah, and because, I mean, Turnbull in his 3 starts, right? I mean, 5 innings, 6 innings, 4 innings, 3 hits, 2 hits, 4 hits, and then he led up his first run of the year the other day on Saturday. So I'm really satisfied with Turnbull. I don't know if we're going to see him get back to that Detroit level where he threw the no-hitter and was pretty solid before the injury.
Well, the walks were what stuck out in his last start. He walked 4 batters in 4 innings against the Pirates, and the first 2 starts, just 1 walk in 11 innings. And he is, just in talking to Turnbull, talking to JT Realmuto, and looking at his track record, when things have gone south for Turnbull, it's because he's getting behind in too many counts. I mean, it's one of the things that stuck out a lot to me in spring and the first 2 starts is that he has put away stuff with 2 strikes. He can expand the zone. He can get hitters to chase out of the zone with multiple pitches, but it's just a matter of him getting to a 1-2 count. If he's 3-1, he's not nearly as effective a pitcher, nor is anybody.
Right.
I agree with that. But yeah, he's one of those guys where if he has to come over the plate in certain counts, 3-1, 2-0 counts, his stuff might fly. I mean, he's not throwing 102 miles an hour. So, I mean, when you get yourself into those situations, the ball might flatten out a little bit because you're not trying to put too much on it, or you're squeezing the ball too tight that you don't get that movement. So it's just one of those things where when you get into poor counts, you usually come up with poor results.
All right, we're going to close it out here, Rick. Bring in the closer here. Go with the righty, no doubt. We'll start with a little this or that, huh? So let's start there. Say Taijuan Walker is ready, right? I know we kind of just alluded to it, but if someone was going to go down and kind of exit the rotation, if they don't go to a 6-man rotation and kind of keep it at 5, would you rather have Turnbull or Sanchez in that rotation?
Turnbull or Sanchez, or Turnbull or Walker?
Turnbull and Sanchez.
Turnbull, Sanchez.
I think Sanchez is a part of your future, you know?
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, Sanchez is a part of your future, and he's a guy who had a great second half last year that you have big hopes for this year. I'm not taking him out of the rotation under any circumstances, personally.
I wouldn't be surprised if, well, I would say goes to the bullpen and maybe Pinto goes down, but I think right now I'm probably leaning more towards Christopher Sanchez being in the rotation.
And the other part of it, too, is that you don't want to lose Taijuan Walker. I mean, he still has, after this season, 2 more years under contract, making $18 million a year. So, you know, after how last postseason went, where he was on the roster but didn't participate, I think the last thing you want to do is have him go through a 30-day rehab assignment and then not put him back in the rotation and put him in the bullpen or something as the long man. No, I don't think that's an option for the Phillies. I think that if everybody's healthy, Walker would re-enter the rotation and Turnbull would either become the long man in that Pinto role, or he might head down to AAA to remain stretched out, as was the conversation to enter the season. But it's a good problem to have if you have 6 starters.
Always a good problem. All right, we'll go to the next one right now. Coming off the bench, Edmundo Sosa or Whit Merrifield. Edmundo right now came off, had a huge game in Washington, had the 2 hits. He has 3 hits and 7 at-bats this season. I know Whit's been struggling. Who would you rather have come off the bench right now, Edmundo Sosa or Whit Merrifield?
Edmundo Sosa. I think he's one of those guys who just has a knack for coming into games and getting big hits. I don't know what it is, but it seems to me that he's a lot more used to playing every 4th or 5th day. And when that happens, you have somewhat of a comfort zone in the sense that you know how to prepare. Corey, you brought up the point about Whit Merrifield. Maybe he just doesn't know how to prepare for games every day. And certain guys thrive off of, okay, I'm going to go take some swings down in the cage and then jump into the batter's box, and they feel pretty good about themselves. Other guys kind of clam up in those situations because they're not used to it.
Edmundo Sosa now as a Philly has had 366 plate appearances, so like a little more than half a season's worth. And he's hit 265 with a 766 OPS, which is actually 6% better than the league average. I think that would surprise a lot of people if they found out that Edmundo Sosa's OPS as a Philly was that high, granted in limited time. But Ricky's point about Sosa being more prepared for bench duty is spot on. I mean, it's a guy who has filled that role his entire big league career. Same kind of goes for Christian Pache, who had the walk-off hit on Monday. We've seen him have big spots, big moments off the bench. Last year in Miami, for example, hit a home run in a pinch hit role in the ninth inning to win them a game, whereas Merrifield is less used to that role. We asked Rob Thompson on Monday why Merrifield over Sosa, for example, in that the day that he was spelling Bohm. And again, that's why Thompson said it was about also just getting Merrifield going. So you got to remember they paid the guy $8 million. They're not going to just treat that as a sunk cost 2 weeks into the season. And we might be sitting here in 6 weeks or so, and Whit Merrifield's hitting 280, and it's not an issue at all. All of this is exacerbated by the fact that the key guys aren't hitting. If the key guys were hitting, we wouldn't be noticing as much of the Merrifield or the Rojas scuffles.
Love it. All right, two more here. We didn't even talk about our guy, the hero last night, Christian Pache. Coming off the bench, he came out and said after the game when talking to T-Mac and Kruk that he hopes that it's the first of many with the Phillies in terms of his walk-off career, which is, I love his confidence, right? Because I feel like no one really has that opportunity to come up with that walk-off hit. First career one for Pache on Monday night. We'll go Christian Pache or Johan Rojas right now, right? In terms of who would you want to see get more at bats? Obviously, Pache, he had the few slips in the outfield, still made the catch, but he did slip twice on Saturday afternoon. When he was in center and left there. Christian Pache or Johan Rojas?
If you asked me a week ago, I might say Pache because the quality of Rojas' bats was just so low, but he has had some better at-bats over the last week, taking pitches, striking the ball with a little more authority. Still not going to be a power hitter, but Rob Thompson's been talking about that Rojas has been smothering the ball too much here in the early season. But I'll tell you, just sitting there again Monday night, watching him play defense, there were 3 balls Rojas made in center field that he just reacted immediately to, made running catches. One of them was against Ryan McMahon, I think, in the first inning, or it might have been in McMahon's second at bat. It was just crushed to the gap in left center. Rojas, his first step is on point, and he just tracks it down gracefully, and it was, I think, a 25% catch probability, which means that there was a 75% chance of it going for a hit. So Rojas makes such a difference defensively every single night. And the fact that the bats are improving a little bit, and the fact that I do think this offense is going to get it going, I would say still roll with Rojas. Pache does offer slightly more offensive upside, though.
Well said. I'm on your side with that. All I keep seeing him is tracking down that ball last night. He almost ran past it. That's how good he is. I mean, this guy could play defense, and he saves your runs that way. So I'm good right where it is right now.
And like you said, Corey, I think graceful is a perfect way to put it. When you see him run and kind of track down the ball, it does. The camera kind of looks like the ball is going in the gap, and then all of a sudden he just gracefully, like a gazelle, dude, just like reaches up, grabs it, and there's no problem.
The greatest thing for fans out there, because we sit in the press box a lot. You watch him off of the crack of the bat, and it's unbelievable the jumps he gets off of the bat, number one. So he's got great instincts, and his speed, he could close down on any ball that stays up in the air.
Right.
It's like he's seen every type of fly ball 100,000 times, like every trajectory and every, the instincts are off the charts with Johan Rojas. I don't think that's something you could teach. I think that's just something a guy naturally has.
Yeah. And
I can only think of one ball and it was last year that he broke back first, and then he had to come in and make a play.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Brandon Marsh, also a young guy, but said that it's the best he's ever seen. And, and he's played with Mike Trout, right? Where, in the outfield like that. And the fact that he is giving Johan Rojas that much praise is awesome. All right, last one here. I know I walked in with my coffee of choice today. And I know it's on Tuesday here. I guess it's a Wawa. They're celebrating their 60th anniversary. They got free coffee, 60-cent donuts. I think I know the answer here from the guy sitting across from me, but Wawa or Dunkin?
I can't drop the mic, can I? Dunkin.
I knew that was going to be.
Are we talking coffee or just all products?
Ooh, let's go.
Well, that's a little different.
I mean, we could go coffee.
Coffee. I'm on like a detox. I'm trying to see how little coffee I can drink this year. I've become too reliant on coffee, so I'm trying to like avoid it at all costs. But I will say that if I do dabble, I would go Wawa. I'm a Wawa guy.
Yeah.
Wawa food is much better.
Well, yeah. Obviously. I mean,
how about you, Spence?
Dude, I mean, I've never been a coffee guy. I'm kind of in the opposite boat that you are, Court. I've just jumped on the coffee train recently. Probably not the best for my health, and I need to calm it down because I already have too much energy to begin with. But baseball season, dude, it's long nights. Last night,
grind.
Dude, just last night, anytime there's a walk-off, my night is exponentially longer. So
we know somebody who's not rooting for walk-offs.
I know. Hey, don't get me wrong. I'll take the wins regardless. But yeah,
it's funny though. I mean, I've been covering the Phillies now for like 10, 11 years. So like the wins and losses, they don't matter to you as much. Like you just want a good story. You want a good game. But when there is a walk-off win, like I got to bed at 5:00 in the morning last night. And it's not because I was just so rah excited or anything, but it's just because there's just more energy in the ballpark. There's more energy in the post-game setting. And it's hard to kind of wind down. I'm sure, Ricky, you probably had a lot of nights like that in your career, right?
I pretty much still do. It's never stopped. It really hasn't. I mean, if you guys know me, I hardly ever sleep.
Guy averages 3 hours of sleep at night and still comes in here with the amount of energy.
I mean, like literally, I will go home after like a game. Then I get home at midnight and I'll stay up till 4:30. It's just that's the way it is.
Getting home at midnight is good. I mean, I got home at like 3 last night.
West Coast trip. Sometimes I don't even bother.
Well, maybe you guys will get a quick snooze in before tonight's middle game. It's Phillies and the Rockies.
Danger.
Thanks a lot to everybody out there for listening or watching the Phillies Talk podcast. For Ricky and Spencer, I'm Corey. We'll catch you later in the week.